What's up YouTube? It's James Q Quick from Learn, Build, Teach, and today I want to show you how to build and deploy your first Lambda function on Netlify. Alright, so this video is following up on a previous video where we did your first Gatsby site deployed on Netlify. So we went through creating a project. We've actually got that here. Gatsby Netlify test. We ran it locally. You can see it here. We didn't change anything. We just kind of ran it. This is not a Gatsby tutorial. It was a deployment tutorial. And then we saw that it got deployed at our fancy URL of Compassionate Hamilton, which is kind of interesting. But now we might want to add a Lambda function on Netlify. So what Lambda functions are serverless functions. They're kind of like one-off HTTP REST endpoints that you can create to do things with. So the example that I've got that I will share with you guys is for my site that I'm rebuilding using the same technologies that I'm talking about here. The learnbuildteach.com website that you guys should check out probably by the time this video comes out. One of the things I needed, since I didn't have a back-end server, it was just front-end, was I needed the ability to handle a subscribe to my newsletter, but I didn't want to include my API key on the front end. So typically when you do things like that, like working with the MailChimp API, you will have your actual post to the MailChimp API on a server. So what I did was create a Lambda function in Netlify that I can send an email to. The server would do validation and then it would actually post that to the MailChimp API so that it's more secure. I can do some extra checking to make sure things look right on the server, and then I can also include the API key there safely. And I didn't have to worry about any CORS issues because you might have CORS issues on the front end. That's just an example of what I'm talking about. Again, the overall goal right here is to create your first Lambda function and actually deploy it on Netlify. So these Lambda functions could do anything. It could do what I'm talking about, actually handling a subscription to a newsletter. It could, anytime this function gets triggered, it could send you a notification, email, it could send you a text message, anything you want. And basically all it is, for the most part, what it is a node endpoint. You can just think of it that way. If you've done any node development or express development, you get an endpoint and you have some input parameters, and then you send back a response. You do whatever you need to and send back a response. Same kind of thing. So not too overly complicated here. So there's good resources here, netlify.com/docs/functions, and there's a couple things that I want to clear up for you, that I will clear up for you. And the first is, let's see, they talk about what Lambda functions are. We'll see that in a second. The most important or kind of trickiest one was actually testing this locally. And so to be able to test these locally, you can add the Netlify Lambda npm package. So I'm going to come back over. This is the test project that I've got in Github that you guys can check out. I'm going to run an install on Netlify Lambda. And what this will allow me to do is run this locally so that I can do some testing of my function before I actually push it out to Netlify. All right, so that got installed pretty quickly. Let's come back over to the docs real quick. And this is saying, let's see here. We're gonna need a couple of different things. One that will do, well, actually we could go ahead and do it now. We could create this Netlify toml file. And what this does is basically when we do a deploy, the Netlify toml defines what we want Netlify to do. So previously in our deployments, if we look at deploy settings, we gave it a command to run. Let's see, where is that? In the edit settings, the command is Gatsby build. So you can either define that here in the UI of Netlify, or you can define that in the Netlify toml file. And then also you can tell anytime they want to serve functions where your functions are going to live. So let's go ahead and create this Netlify toml, and this is going to be in the root directory of our project. Nope, not that. Netlify toml. And now I'm going to copy this. And this is saying when we build, serve the functions from a certain directory. And what I've seen so far is that we will serve them from a Lambda directory. Now, this is what they do in here is a little bit odd to me. They don't. To me, the difference between where you actually write your functions and then the directory that you serve them from are two different things. And to me, in the docs, it wasn't that clear. So to reiterate, this is defining where these functions are going to be served from after a build. And then we also need a directory. And I'm going to just call this functions directory. This is the actual source code for the functions that we create. So one last time, functions directory is where we're going to write our source code. Then the Lambda directory, which notice isn't present here, is going to be the output of those functions that are ready to be served in Netlify. Hope that makes sense. So in functions, I just want to create a new file, and it's just test.js. And what Netlify does is it takes every file inside of whatever directory you tell them is your functions directory. And it takes every file, and basically each one of these becomes its own function with the name of the file. So this will be the test function. So let's come back over to the docs here, and I'm going to scroll up and grab the basic function handler here. And what this is, you get an event, a context, and a callback. And the event is going to be all the things that you'd be used to that come in to your endpoint. And let's see, is this what it is? Similar to AWS API Gateway. It's going to have a body, which is the most important thing. It'll have query string parameters, if that's the case, headers, and different things like that. So that sounds good. The context in which the function is called, like user information. Haven't used that as much. And then the last one is the callback, and this is what you're going to return back to or actually what you're going to call to the user. So for here in this example, you call the callback function. You pass in the first parameter is an error. So if you have an error, you'll pass back an actual error. If not, you'll pass null. And if the first one is null, it's going to take this and return that as the body of your function. All right. So now that we know what it is, let's, I'm scrolling the wrong way. Let's look in here. Now, one of the last things that was a little tricky for me is when you try to run this locally, it says to run the Netlify Lambda serve command with a source folder. But if I try Netlify Lambda serve and then functions, for some reason it doesn't recognize this command. So it seems like, as far as I can tell, this command can only be set up through your npm script. So I'm going to add two different scripts here. That and the package.json. And so I'll come in and add these two scripts. So notice this looks almost exactly the same. Netlify Lambda serve functions, Netlify Lambda build functions. This one is the one you actually want to do when you deploy. This is when you're testing locally, basically. And so we created aliases for start Lambda and build Lambda. So I'm going to save that. So I can do an npm run and then start Lambda. And that's going to start it up. And it's going to, you'll notice it actually went ahead and did a build. We don't care about this now. This is where it's going to be served from in the future, but we don't care about this right now. And it says the endpoint test equals test.js. So that thing is ready on server 9000. So let's create, actually we never even copied in the scaffolding stuff. So let's go ahead and copy this. So the exports handler. And then we'll do a callback and we'll pass in null as the first thing. And then an object which has a status of 200 and then a body of yay, it worked. All right, so to test this, we can open up something called Postman, which allows us to basically simulate HTTP request to a certain place. So if you guys don't have access to Postman, I would go ahead and download and install that and get it up and running. And what we're looking for is we're going to post to localhost 900 and then the name of the command of the function that we're actually posting to. So if I run this, I get an invalid status code. So it looks like I messed up here. Let's go ahead and double check this. And I think this should be, yeah, status code, not status. So status code instead of status. Let's save this. Notice this is going to auto refresh. So now we're good to try this again. And I'll come back over to Postman and try to send. And now we get a yay, it worked. So obviously this is about as simple as it gets. One of the things that I would like to show you guys is how to make an HTTP request somewhere else. So in the example of me working with the MailChimp API and calling this function to then have the function post to the API, I'm not going to do exactly that, but I do want to simulate something. So I'm going to open something called RequestBin. But what RequestBin does is allows you to, it creates basically endpoints that you can handle request, you can send requests to just to test them out to see if they're working. So create a RequestBin, and this will basically create a URL that we can do a post to. So we're going to copy this URL, and I'm going to use a package called Axios to do to make the actual HTTP request. So let's install npm I Axios, and this one's pretty popular. So if you guys haven't heard of it, it might be worth checking out if you're doing any kind of HTTP request. And so in Express world, I'm going to say const not express, and not express at all, actually node world. Const express equals require Axios. So this is going to get us access to Axios. And then I've got a little bit of boilerplate code here. So I'm going to, well, I'll type it out. So we're going to call Axios, and then we're going to pass it basically a configuration thing. So we're going to do a method of post. We'll do a URL of, and we need to get this from, not there. Sorry if you guys are getting sick watching the moving around. Notice this finish down here. So there's the URL that we're going to post to, and then we're going to say data, and it is name James. It doesn't really matter what data is. I think that's all we need there. Let me save that. And then we're going to chain on a dot then, and it's going to take a response, and we can just console log response here and send that return. You can also have a failure. So catch will catch an error, and we could log that error if it happens. And if we wanted to, we could just call back with new error. Something went wrong, so we don't really know what it is. Now, I would probably do a little bit more to make this a little fancier in a real application, but really all we're trying to do is that we can trigger this this function, and then we can use Axios to call RequestBin. So let's save this and let's see how this goes. So here's the logs for our Lambda function, and if I come over to test here and do a send, I get back a yay, so it looks like it went well. And then in RequestBin, there should be a way in here. Guess maybe go to this. Sorry if I'm fumbling around just figuring this out myself. No, let's see, maybe if I refresh, then we should see that we had, okay, here we go. So here's the request where we sent name James in the body, and if I change this to say Jess, my wife, and we come back over to Postman and we re-trigger this, we should see another request at the top or the bottom maybe. There's James, Jess. Okay, so we are successfully seeing that we can call our Lambda function locally. We can pass it some data, and we didn't actually look at that. So let's see. Let's look in the body here, and this is a test. So I can just say before. So let's pass in name James. So we're gonna pass this into the Lambda function. So we're gonna get the body out of the event. And the way this works is it actually just passes basically a JSON string to the body. So we need to call JSON parse on event.body. And this will give us the body, and then we can console log parsed body. And I'm going to take out the other console log here. So this is actually kind of important because this took me a while to figure out. Is the body coming into a Lambda function is just a JSON string, so you need to call JSON parse to get it. So let's call this one more time. Say call it. Something went wrong. So something just went wrong, and I kind of paused and cut out some of this. And just to try to figure this out, it looked like there was just a problem with request bin. I think it was just full, so the request to it failed. So no big deal. I just ran the test again, and I didn't change anything. I just ran it again. And you can see that name James is being populated here. It's being console logged out. So I can, instead of just passing a hard-coded Jess here, I could get the input to the function, the Lambda function. And so I could get parsed body.name and pass that along to Axios. So let's try this one more time, and we'll come up with a new random name, Jeff, and we'll send that. And we'll look in here, and it should say Jeff, and then back in request bin, if we refresh, we should see the latest one. Oh, if we still have it, there we go. Looks like this is just kind of a little finicky, but it's pretty cool to work with. And you can see name Jeff is popping up here. So I think that's enough kind of building and testing of our function for now. Now let's go ahead and deploy this to Netlify. So the way I've got my setup working here with this site is on a publish to the master branch of this GitHub repository, it's going to automatically go ahead and do a Gatsby build, and it's going to serve the Gatsby site from the public directory. Now, one of the things that we have to do is actually run a command to do a build of the functions at the same time of deployment. So I created, and I'm just going to copy and paste this into the package.json file here, a new alias script here called prod. And what prod does is it runs two different commands sequentially. So it will run npm run build first, which is this Gatsby build. So it'll run this build command. Then it will run the build lambda. So it will build the lambda functions after that. So if you didn't do this, you would only have one or the other, right? You can only run one function. So if I did this one, it would do a build here, but not a build here. If I did a Lambda build, it would do a Lambda build, but not a Gatsby build. So I wanted to do both of these things. So let's save this and let's deploy. And we've got one more thing we need to fix here to make it work. But for now, let's see, get status. I want to add all of these. Actually, before we do that, in the get ignore, typical get ignore stuff is you want to ignore, let's say Lambda functions build output. Anything you build, you usually don't want to check in. So I'm going to ignore the Lambda directory. And the Lambda directory, again, is the directory where our functions will be served from. And just for awareness, inside of Lambda directory, you can see the test.js just becomes a very minified, ugly function script that is not readable and obviously not to be used for us. But that's where the function actually gets served from. So if I do a get status again, I should see that Lambda directory is ignored. So let's do a get add all. Let's do get commit and say added first Lambda function. And why am I getting, get add, did I not grab the, maybe I need to add that directly. So get add dot get ignore, and then commit added get ignore. Okay, so we've got our commit. Now we need to push, and I've got a shortcut here, GGP for get push. And again, this is going to push to GitHub. And so let's check GitHub first. We should see some of these files were updated seconds ago, 38 seconds ago. Then in Netlify, not the docs, but my site, if we go to the deploys of my site, we'll see it's running a build now. All right, so it says it's published. If I come to my site, I'll still see this should just be the same because I didn't change anything on Gatsby. But if I come over to the functions tab, I should be able to see a list of the functions that I've created, and I don't see any here. And the problem is in my deploy settings, see site settings, I guess, and deploy settings. Where is this? Build and deploy. I'm still running the old Gatsby build command. I actually want to update that command to run npm run prod, which will run the prod command, which runs the build for Gatsby and for Lambda Functions. So I'll save that. And I don't know, does this trigger a deploy automatically? No, but I can come in and trigger a deploy. Trigger deploy. And if we look through these files, it should do both of these things. So it'll do a Gatsby build first. And notice it found the Netlify toml, and the Netlify toml actually overrides the build command. If you specify a build command in Netlify toml, it'll override what's defined in Netlify UI. We didn't, so that's okay. So it looks like we might actually need to, in the Netlify toml, we might actually still need to define our build command. So the way we can do this is add a line here that says command, and it's going to run npm run prod. So let's do git add all, git commit all, added build command in Netlify toml, and then ggp, using all my shortcuts now to speed this up a little bit, to go ahead and push this out there. Now we should be able to come back and look at deploys. So here's the one that's building, and let's look through the logs to see if that helped. Okay, so it looks like it's making progress. So here it ran Gatsby build. This video is getting a little bit longer than I thought it would, but that's all right. And then we've got Netlify Lambda build Lambda functions, or Netlify Lambda build functions, which is going out and doing the building of the actual Lambda function. So the site is live. So it looks like this thing is still working. All right, so that's still good. Then if I come back to my site and look in the functions tab, I should now see my test.js function. So you can see the log here. And the way I get to this is I go to, let's come back to Postman, is I come to the URL of my site.com/.netlify/functions/ the name of the test, or the name of the function that I want to run, and then do a send, and I should get hopefully the same result. And the last thing to test is in the request bin, refresh this, and hopefully we'll see a second. Yeah, so here it was Jeff here, and then a second Jeff. So that's the one that just came from the actual live site. Woo! Oh, that was a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but I think, to me personally, I think this is super cool. So we created a serverless function in Netlify. We ran it locally. We were able to test it locally. We interacted using the Axios API, interacted with request bin, which just kind of set up a dumping ground of trying out test post requests. I've got my dog walking in here right now. Sorry about that. And then we were able to deploy it to Netlify, where we could build our Gatsby site and build our Lambda functions and have them ready to serve. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to know what you guys' experience is with Netlify. Are you doing cool stuff in Netlify? Are you using Lambda functions? Are you testing them locally? What's your deployment look like? Comment in the section below. Reach out to me on Twitter at JamesQQuick, or come and check out the learnbuildteach.com website, which should be up by the time you're watching this video. And let me know how things are going for you, the cool stuff that you're working on. So thanks again for checking it out, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and you can check out my newsletter on learnbuildteach.com to get updates on the latest content as it comes out. Thanks for watching.